Welcome back to the Friday Night 360 AZ preview show. Jordan Ham, Haley Stasiak. We're going to be here every single Wednesday at 11:15 talking about the biggest stories in the high school football week. Obviously, with games a few weeks away, we wanted to take a kind of a broader look, and we're going to be doing a segment called the Neighborhood Watch, which focuses in on a certain area of the state and kind of what their football landscape looks like. So we're going to go ahead, bring in Ralph Amsden. He's from Arizona Varsity, and he is an expert on Chandler, really statewide. But I think that if there are few who know the Chandler area better than Ralph. Ralph, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm excited to be on with you guys. Congrats on the new show.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
So let's just hop right into it. Plenty to talk about in terms of the Chandler schools, and I don't think there was a bigger story in the offseason other than the Hamilton hazing case. And obviously that's still an ongoing investigation. There's still a lot to sift through, and a result won't be happening anytime soon. But just talking strictly football, with Dick Banaszewski leading the way and senior leadership like Tyler Shuck and Jawar Jordan, how do you think they're equipped to deal with football season with all of this going on campus?
I mean, well, they are and they're not equipped. I mean, nobody's really equipped to deal with this. That's why it becomes such a big story that people talk about nonstop. And there's really no manual or preparation that you can make besides taking cliche advice to tune stuff out, focus on your teammates, focus on the season. But it's going to get in there and it's going to be distracting. But then again, because of their age, because they're young, because they're facing adversity, and because kids are just generally resilient, they'll be able to withstand really a lot of it. But it's going to be really hard for them to ignore. And I do expect it via the transfers that have happened as a result of it, or the change in the coaching staff, or in the way that they do things day to day, to definitely have an effect on them that translates to the field, and unfortunately for them, they play in the absolute toughest region that there is in all of Arizona high school football, and maybe on the West Coast it could rival some of the bigger ones in California even. And so I think it's going to be very tough for them. But as you mentioned, they are talented. They have talent on the offensive line, at quarterback, at running back, at receiver. Defensively is going to be really where they need to step up and gain some consistency. But if they're going to compete this year, they're going to have to outscore some people.
Chandler has a plethora of standouts. You got Jacob Conover, Gunnar Romney, Jarrett Cowell, just to name a few. Who are the under-the-radar guys for the Wolves?
To be honest, it's hard to be at Chandler and be under the radar.
Very true.
There's always somebody that could have a breakout season that we're not talking about right now. Obviously, I don't know if anybody expected Jacob Conover to be as good as he was, out of the gate. I'd heard some very good things, but to be able to go to California and throw for hundreds and hundreds of yards and do what he did, that I think would have been unexpected. I think that there are players who are attached to names that you might already know, like Chris Manoa, who's a UNLV commit, who could go from good to great, to dominant at his position in that region against some really, really good offensive linemen. But I think that at Chandler, you just kind of see players go from good to great. Jarrett Caldwell, somebody who maybe had 10 catches last year and already has a bunch of offers and is committed as well, just because people know what happens when you step into that starting role at Chandler High School. And so, again, it's very hard to be under the radar and be at Chandler.
The Perry Pumas had one of the best season in their school history. They return a ton of talent, including their quarterback, Brock Purdy. Do you think that they're poised to make the next step in their program's development this year?
And that's one of those things where you can make the next step, but you just have to hope that Chandler's gate's not twice as wide as yours when they're taking their next step. And so I believe that they will be more consistent than they were last year. People will think back and remember them as a 10-win team, but they almost lost to Highland. Their defense couldn't get a stop against a team like Highland. And so I absolutely believe that they're going to be a much more believable title contender than they were last year. But they start the season against Desert Vista, who's also going to be, in my view, taking one of the biggest steps forward of any team in 6A in the state. And so it's really important for them to get off to a good start, show that not only are they keeping things going on offense, but defensively with some of the talent that they have, that they're able to shut down another very good team. So definitely going to take a step forward. It's just a matter of whether or not it's enough, and because everybody else is kind of moving forward as well.
Bash has got a new head coach in Rich Wellbrock. The Bears went 3-8 in 2016, kind of getting this new era started for the Bears. What's in store for them?
Well, I think the first thing that they'll notice is less sort of behind the scenes chaos. When Gerald Todd took that program over, there were over 30 applicants for that job, and they decided to stay in-house and go with an assistant over some, big names who had a lot of great experience and titles to their name and everything like that. And so I think for the last 3 years, there was always this pressure on Gerald Todd to prove that, he was better than everybody else that they passed on for him. And, ultimately, they ended up giving up over, I think, 40 points a game. And it doesn't work out, and then they go back. Basha goes back and they do what a lot of people thought that they'd maybe have done 3 years before, so they could be the one to take a step ahead of Hamilton, the way that Chandler did, the way that Basha was kind of poised to at the time. And Rich Wellbrock is going to be the guy that gives them that credibility. The only thing that they need to do is hang on to the students that are in that district, so that they're not going to Chandler and they're not going to newly opened Castile. But because they're basically, and I saw what you guys did on Colin Collins, he's fantastic. There's some solid linemen and a healthy season away from getting back to 10 wins. And I think that you'll see more discipline, and I think that you'll see more excitement surrounding this program.
You mentioned Castile, and they're in a unique situation because they have guys who have been starters for 2 years, yet they're incoming juniors. How do you think them being so battle-tested will help them grow over the next couple of years?
Well, they have the advantage this year of having more experience together at the varsity level than almost anybody they're going to go up against. Outside of very established competition last year, they were dominant, and you have to believe that the experience that they have playing together played more of a factor in their success than the large number of people that they have in the program. And while that does factor in, if you look at college and NFL teams, anytime you get the same five on the offensive line to start more than a few games in a row, and they understand what each other are going to be, everything just sort of clicks and they perform better. I think to a certain extent, that can go for high school as well. A lot of these guys were playing in Pop Warner together. I had heard about Gunnar Cruz far before he was ever, in high school. And so, these guys, having already played 2 years together, going into a third, having the same Spencer Stowers is just a fantastic coach. I think that they're going to be in a position to compete for a title immediately. Will they be able to jump up a division and do the same thing next year, the way maybe a Valor Christian in Colorado has done, or Centennial did during the 17-team Super Division year? I don't necessarily think that that's the case, but this year I look forward to them being maybe, if not a contender, the favorite for the 3A title.
Lots of talent in the Chandler district. Ralph, for you, who is the most intriguing team in 2017?
Wow. I every year you don't hear that much about Brophy, and they're just kind of sandwiched in that premier region as well. And to me, they always by default end up the most intriguing, because they sort of define, they're the litmus test for every single team that's in the Chandler Unified School District. And Brophy usually splits. They usually beat the two who are going to be at the bottom and lose to the two who are going to be at the top. And so what I'm most interested in is to see how Brophy gets off to if they can get off to a fast start against Pinnacle and get some momentum. We're spending all this time talking about all these Chandler teams, and it's a neighborhood that I know well, but ultimately the spoiler this year could end up being the Brophy Broncos.
Really great stuff as always, Ralph. Thanks.
Thank you.
That was Ralph Amsden with ArizonaVarsity.com. He does a ton of great work statewide. He was referencing California, Colorado teams. He really knows his stuff when it comes to prep football, and college does some good work covering ASU as well. So this has been the first edition of the Friday Night 360 AZ preview show. Thanks so much for joining us.